Everybody. How are you? I got to remember to do this, I guess.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of iconic brands over the last couple of days, right? Kleenex, Pepsi, Miller Lite. Well, in the next half hour, we're going to talk about one of the very most iconic American brands, and that is, of course, Empire Carpets. And there's a thing that you can do to figure out if you're a real Chicagoan. Okay, there's tons of lists. You guys are laughing. You know what I'm talking about, right? And there's something that is on every single one of these lists. It's you refer to Mike Ditka as the coach, and you know that there's literally only two seasons, winter and construction. And you can actually sing the Empire jingle. So come on, everybody. 588-2300 Empire today. So when I was growing up here, there wasn't the today. So now there's the immediacy. I love how you got that in there. So anyway, we're going to spend the next half hour with Cameron here and talk about how he has stewarded this amazing American brand. So thanks for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about your role and what your major focuses are at Empire.
Sure. So I'm the marketing director. Based on the brand side, I pretty much sit in the middle of our internal marketing agency. So we've got digital teams and creative teams, analytics, SEO, email, the full gamut. Myself and my team, we kind of sit in the middle, and our responsibility is new customer acquisition, right? So we'll make sure all these channels are working in unison to drive new customer acquisition and drive incremental acquisition and incremental revenue. So what we're really focused on is building new marketing channels, new customer acquisition channels, and scaling existing ones. And we'll talk a little bit later, but it can be very difficult for a brand that's very well known, right? If not only in Chicago, but we're in 76 cities right now. We're a national brand. We're the largest shop-at-home flooring provider in the country. So when you talk about incrementality and driving new business, you have to break through everything else you're already doing. So originally it was all TV, right? And we layered on search and social, and now we've got a whole gamut of channels that we're working on. So every time we test something new, it's got to drive incrementality. So that's really what we're focused on doing.
So the home improvement category has boomed in the pandemic and continues to boom. We've experienced it at our company because it's a huge category for us now as viewership has changed and everything. But what consumer trends are you seeing change? Like, where are people going? How are they going about this? Anything that you saw happen during the pandemic that seems like it's continuing, or what do you see on the horizon for this? For basically just home improvements is, particularly in flooring.
Yeah, so the COVID story for us, similar to a lot of home improvement brands, was a roller coaster and continues to be a roller coaster, right? When COVID hit, the country shut down. We are a shop at home model, right? So people come to our website, or they call us, they set up an appointment for a sales rep to come out to their house and show them carpet or hard surfaces. Well, when COVID hit, we couldn't go to people's homes to show them product, right? So we had to pivot very quickly, figure out how to do things virtually. We stood up different products from a marketing perspective that were in beta at the time that we weren't ready to stand up, but we launched them. Case in point, our room visualizer, right? We've got a tool on our site where you can go and take a picture of your room. A couple clicks or a couple swipes, you can swipe in what new floors would look like in your room against your existing windows, existing furniture. That was something we were testing, but when COVID hit, we needed a way for sales reps to sell, and this was kind of in our back pocket. So we launched that product, and not only did the sales reps love it, but we saw consumer engagement just ate it up, right? Because everyone's on their phone, they're browsing, they're not going anywhere. They love that room visualizer. So as COVID kind of continued, right, after a couple of weeks, we started to see demand increase. Now, stepping back a little bit, when COVID first hit, and we were shutting down, we turned off TV. Now, remember, Empire is an iconic brand because of our heavy television investment for decades, right? That earworm, that jingle. So we turned off television during COVID, and demand started to come back. TV was still off. Demand started to come back. We started investing in search like we had been before and bringing back social and other channels. So it presented a really unique opportunity for us to test back into TV, right? We'd never turned TV off. So it was kind of always a question mark is what is TV actually doing for the brand? So we're able to kind of test into TV, right? Turn on local broadcasts in certain markets. What is it doing in terms of lift? Test national cable. What is it doing in terms of lift? And start really looking at our TV investment and what it's doing and looking at it from a lift perspective, from an overall business and customer acquisition standpoint. So that was really cool. When during COVID, post-COVID, everyone's still at home, right? So home services boomed. Demand was through the roof. We ran into problems. It wasn't with the supply chain. We were able to handle that very quickly. We have a very good operations team and a very good supply chain management. But we found was staffing issues, right? So because there was so much demand, we couldn't keep up. So we had to really look at our channels at a market level and adjust spend strategically. So we're only spending in areas where we could actually support the demand in that area. So we did great. We've seen that demand continue to come and continue to be steady through early this year, right? And now you're starting to see home services are competing for wallet share they weren't competing for last year, right? People are now looking at, well, let's go on spring break. Let's go out for Memorial Day weekend. It's Mother's Day. Let's go visit mom. Like you weren't seeing that last year. So the wallet share is, and the competition for wallet share is heavier this year than it has been in the past. Fine, we're dealing with that. So when I talk about a roller coaster, it was like completely down. Customers were very focused on their houses and their homes, wherever they were living. They're looking at their carpet and they're like, this is really drab. We can call Empire, get some new carpet tomorrow. Let's do it. And so we rode that wave, and now we're kind of coming back to reality, right? And you pulled some demand forward. Now you're kind of dealing with that repercussion, and that's where we really pride ourselves in being able to, when the market becomes a little bit softer, we're able to pivot. And we've got all these great marketing channels we've built up over the years that we can scale up really quickly. So that's kind of what we've seen from a customer, standpoint, and how consumer behavior has changed from a home services standpoint.
That's great. So Empire is really known for performance marketing. Like that's how you started, performance marketing and DR messaging. And now, like that's the buzzword. That's what everybody wants. I mean, everybody's getting into your space. So how do you define that performance marketing and how do you approach performance marketing? So what do you do to make sure that you're staying at the forefront using all the tools, that are available to everybody now in this space?
So when we think about performance marketing, we think about direct attribution, right? And that doesn't mean last touch, but it means you can drive a direct attribution to the dollars that you're spending to the revenue that is generating, creating an ROI. So when you hear these buzzwords about performance marketing, what does that mean? It's part precision targeting, right? You're targeting our consumers right point. But for us, it's incrementality and it's attribution 100%. Now, when we talk about lift and incrementality and attribution, it's not just did we invest more in social and did we get more leads? Fine, that's part of it, right? You see a lift in Micah, excuse me. You see for example, you invest in social, right? You look for an increase in leads, or we call it appointments, in that geo that you're investing in. That's part of it. But what if you invest in a certain channel and you don't drive incremental leads, but you might see a shift in your channel mix, right? So say your channel mix, you're heavy on social, you're 30% brand, 30% non-brand. Well, you just invested in social in this DMA. Now you're seeing that shift from non-brand to brand. And you're seeing 40% of your customers coming in on brand, much less on non-brand. You might have the same number of customers coming through the door, but they're a lot cheaper because those brand leads are a fraction of the cost of your non-brand leads. So you have to take in that savings into account against the incremental spend you put on social, and you look to see is that incremental spend working. And that's how we really approach things. It's all about lift. It's all about, pre-post and control groups and test groups. And, if we're going to take this group of consumers and target them with these 4 channels, well, how does that perform against these group of consumers that only get these 2 channels, right? Is that extra investment worth it at the end of the day? So that's how we approach our marketing. That's how we approach, performance marketing. Now, that's not to be said that we definitely value CPM style marketing and linear TV and what that's doing for us. But like I said before, we were able to approach linear TV from a performance marketing angle during COVID, right? We were able to test back into it. What lift is it driving? So you know if it's driving X% lift, then you can attribute those dollars to incremental leads, incremental revenue, and then look at an ROI from those dollars spent on media. We look at that across all of our channels, and that's why it can be very difficult to stand up new channels. Because if you're everywhere and you've got this new shiny tool, cool, it's, you know, it's a new buzzword, but if you're gonna invest dollars in that tool, is it driving incremental revenue? Or would you have gotten those customers anyway from all of your other channels? That's where we're really kind of spend a lot of our time looking at. It's very data driven, right? Most of our time is spent in Excel or looking in Tableau and different tools, but that is performance marketing to us. You know, if you take away anything away from this, it's about incrementality, right? And if you're a young brand and you're only on a couple channels, it's fairly easy to invest in new channels and drive incrementality. But if you are a very well-known brand that's already got a heavy investment across marketing channels, both traditional and non-traditional, then it can be really tough to break through with something new. But when you do, it's awesome. And it's a cool win, and it's a great story to tell up to the executives and the board.
Thanks, Cameron. So making those changes and going on your marketing path, if you will. So you've been responsible internally for like stewarding those shifts and managing that internally. And, you know, sometimes getting corporations to do something different sometimes is like turning a battleship. So like, how are you, like, what did you learn from being able to get your marketing mix to change internally? And, you know, how do you help some of these marketers out here that need to help their organizations understand, like, we need to move in this direction. And some people, you know, don't really like change sometimes.
So yeah, we've got a great leadership team on the marketing team. We've got a great executive team that has a really good grasp on marketing. So the conversations are a little bit easier, but for us, it's adopting a test and learn mentality and really embracing a test and learn mentality and not being afraid to fail or encouraging failure is key, but doing it quickly. So for us, if you have that test and learn mentality, you're testing new channels and you're looking for lift, it's a really easy conversation to have to say, hey, this new channel we just tested is driving a 30% lift in consumers and consumer acquisition, which is an X ROI. Let's invest extra dollars here, right? And for us, one of the tough conversations has always been, we've always been a last touch house, right? Everything we report on has always been last touch. A lot of marketers have that challenge because they're reporting on last touch, but you're a marketer, right? You know, we live in an omni-channel world. How do you justify spending upper funnel, mid funnel, when you know you're going to convert that person on non-brand search, right? How do you justify pulling money away from non-brand and putting it into a mid funnel that doesn't have that direct attribution? And so those are conversations we'd had to have internally. And the way you do that is you show lift. And that's how you make the conversation with an executive team or a finance team, because you can show actual incremental dollars being generated from this spend, even though you don't have a last touch or last click attribution. You know, this group of consumers saw the ad on this channel and they were 30% more likely to convert. So you can take, you know, if they spent $1 million, attribute 30% of that $1 million to that spend, and then you can look at your ROI. So you have to really look at it holistically in an omni-channel way, but the way you report on it is very linear, right? We spent this much money on this channel, it drove this much extra revenue, that's it. It's an easy conversation to have, but the only way to do that is through test and learn. And I can't tell you how many things and new channels we've tested that have failed. And then you make the decision, well, is there anything there? Can we optimize this and get that, you know, can we get that incremental lift, or is this thing just dead in the water? And that's where your experience comes into play. That's where, you know, your marketing prowess comes into play, and understanding it's like, you tested this, it's a dud, this is not going to work. Or we tested this and okay, we're close, I think we can optimize this a little bit and scale up and then show the incremental lift. But for us, it's been, and it's still a work in progress, right? We've got a lot of channels we can measure from last touch perspective, right? Search is a great example of that. You can measure search from last touch perspective. But when you look in Google UI, Google's not looking at last touch. It's looking at this person clicked today, converted tomorrow on a different channel. Google's going to take credit for that, right? So but when you when you've been reporting on last touch for all these channels and you've tested a new channel and you're just looking at lift and it's generating lift, the incremental ROI on that is never going to be as clean cut as what is on the last touch ROI. So you just have to make sure you're stewarding those conversations and being very transparent as and sharing how you're measuring this. And you'll be surprised, people will actually appreciate that you're being creative in the way you're approaching things, in the way, and you're looking for new opportunities to drive revenue. So that's kind of how we've approached it, right? And we're very fortunate, right? We have a team on the marketing side and the executive team that's very excited about testing new things and learning and trying different initiatives, not just on the marketing side, but across the business. So if you would have that culture and you steward that culture, then it makes it really easy to push new initiatives forward, try something, learn, try it again, learn, scale, right? That's kind of how we look at that.
Awesome. So, clearly you talk a lot about data and you're using data in a lot of different ways, which is great. And I think we all are. But let's talk a little bit about your customer segments and, how do you think about them? How do you reach the different segments? What are you doing to differentiate? Are you changing message? Are you, how are you going about that? Because I'm sure you have several different categories of customers that are fans.
We do. So if you think about the Empire customer, it's a homeowner, right? It's as broad as it gets. And it's, really it's a suburban homeowner with 2.2 kids and half a dog. And it's like, that's the Empire customer, right? But when you start looking at consumer segments, for us, it can be either defined by the channel or it can be defined by the persona. So we're really good at like crafting messaging to the channel, right? If you're a new mover, I know you're a new mover, I'm gonna give you new mover messaging. If you are, doing a refi or something, I've identified you're doing a refi, we can give you messaging to that, or a new mom or whatever it is, right? Where it gets tricky and where this is still a work in progress for us, and I think you've heard a lot of brands talk the last day or so, is when you start targeting personas. So one of the things that we're doing is like a lot of brands, you create your lookalike model, target that lookalike model, and within that lookalike model, you'll have your personas, right? So is it Millennial Mary? Is it the boomer? Is it the empty nester? That's where your messaging starts to get very, targeted toward those individual personas. And if you have the right data partner, you can measure how those personas are coming in, right? And we look at that on a weekly basis. We can see a shift from, we're getting more millennials, or we're getting more boomers and more Gen Xers and less, whatever. We're always looking at that. And then you're trying to understand, okay, last quarter we got more millennials. Why? Right? What did we do differently? Did we do more display? Did we do more, OTT? That's kind of where we look at consumer segments. Now we are limited in our creative resources like any other brand is. So I can't go out and create, if we've got 20 personas, 20 different ads for, every touch in your journey. So you got to kind of be smart and use your resources where you can. But that's I think kind of the future, right? Lookalike models, great. We've got that. Everyone's doing that. It works really well. And we're always testing different lookalike models. There's different data partners out there. We are always testing different ones. We're running congruent lookalike models all the time and looking at, performance changes in the models. But once you start cutting up those models into personas, that's where it's going to get really cool for marketers. And I think it's going to be more important even like in a cookieless world, right? Because if you've got your lookalike model, that these 30 million Americans look like our best customers. Okay, go target them. You can start doing direct attribution, right? If you know who the people are, their address. Well, for us, it's great because we actually have to go to their house. So I know their address is like when they become a customer. So I know that I targeted 123 Main Street. 123 Main Street came in and converted. And if we do it right, you use different partners out there to deliver your messages. We know that 123 Main Street got an OTT ad, they got a display ad, and they probably got direct mail. Whereas 456 Main Street, they just got programmatic and they didn't convert, right? So there's some lift somewhere in the mix that 123 Main Street got with the multi-touch approach versus the single touch approach that 456 got. So like that way of thinking that's where we see kind of the future and how we're looking at data and data-driven marketing. We've got a ton of first-party data, but unlike a lot of retail brands, once you buy your floors, you're not really coming back next week for more floors, right? It's hopefully you're not coming back for a while and your floors last a good 10 years or something like that. But, you know, new customer acquisition is identifying who those personas are, giving them the relevant messaging, doing a good job of understanding customer journey, right? Where is your Gen X segment consuming data or consuming messagings? Where is your, you know, empty nesters? Where are they getting their messaging? And the next iteration of the lookalike model is adjusting your lookalike models, your personas, to understand where they have a higher propensity to, you know, which channel is driving a higher propensity to purchase. So your empty nesters might convert higher or have a higher lift from a direct mail piece, whereas your Gen Xers might have a higher lift from seeing 10 display ads. Everyone's going to be different. And, you know, your Gen Z might be because they saw you on TikTok and that drove a lift in their conversions. It's understanding each one of those personas, which one of your channels is driving lift. And that doesn't mean just give them that one channel. You're still an omni-channel approach, but you can really start to focus your spend on those channels towards those different personas. And I was getting a little technical, but that's kind of where we see this going from a data perspective, at least for our business, and being able to segment out and target certain personas and target them with the right creative from a messaging standpoint, but also the right channel. And channel is so critical to what we do, and that's why we've been able to, you know, not be hurt by a softening of the market. That's why we've been able to survive when Facebook, you know, went flat after iOS 14.5. No problem. We just scaled up other channels. So from a performance marketing standpoint, channel diversity is also very key, right? You cannot put all your eggs in one basket. It will never work. And not only because it's omni-channel and we live in an omni-channel world, but because if one of those channels falls, you can mitigate that decline with your other channels, scaling them right up.
That's awesome. And, you know, again, yes, you get, you know, very technical, but you have all of the information. So you're using it for good and not evil. So that's good. So, you know, this is a question for a party of one. What is your, how do you see OTT and CTV fitting into your marketing strategy moving forward?
Love it. So we definitely see it as a key to our future success. That's where the world is going. We need to be there, right? Your marketing is only as good as the people you're talking to, and if you're talking to the right people. So we know that consumers are tuning into OTT and streaming more and more every single day. We know we need to be there. We have not figured it out yet. We're still learning the space. We're still learning what different providers are out there. Premium, you know, we will get there soon. I'm not concerned about it, but it's definitely a complicated space. It's a space that moves very quickly. So we're just doing our research and our due diligence to figure out the best approach. And does it live on the digital side of the house? Does it live on the media side of the house? Does it live in the middle? That's all conversations that we're having, you know, at this time.
Awesome. Well, we're here to help.
Yes.
Okay, so this is probably the last question that I have. What is one of your key priorities that fits into your growth strategy for like the next year, the next 18 months? Like, what are you really concentrating on to push the business forward?
So Empire has always been extremely good at capturing demand, right? If you're looking for floors and you've already done your research and looked at reviews and now you're ready to buy, we're really good at getting in front of you with either a deep discount offer or some sort of ad to get you convert. We've always been good at that. Where we see an opportunity for growth is getting in front of consumers earlier in their journey, right? How do we get in front of the right consumers mid-funnel, early funnel with awareness, and then tying those dollars and that spend and that investment to a direct ROI. And that's kind of where I talked about lift, right? In different segments. And this segment, we're gonna go after and do a lot of upper funnel engagement versus our control, see if it drives lift, and just keep testing those upper funnel channels and mid-funnel channels. So that's one. The other big area we see that we're excited about is really investing in understanding the voice of the customer. And that's not necessarily a marketing perspective, right? Marketing has a big part of it. ORM is under our wheelhouse, and we focus a lot of effort on ORM. But voice of the customer and understanding voice of the customer, the tactics of getting that feedback from the customer is a marketing channel. It's a marketing exercise, right? You're asking the customer for feedback at different points in their journey, pre and post sale. And then once you understand that data, adjusting your operations to address the customer. So that's where we see a big opportunity for growth, because the whole idea is to take Empire today from being the best flooring company in the world to being the most loved flooring company in the world. And that's where we want to get to. So I think we'll get there.
Awesome. Well, we have a couple more minutes. So are there any questions out there anywhere?
Easy peasy.
There you go. Oh, here we go.
Not that easy.
Almost. We're almost off.
Question for you, Cameron. What's the biggest struggle you guys have right now as a business?
Well, if you asked me a year ago, I would have said staffing. If you asked me 18 months ago, I would have said, product. Right now, I don't know. It's tough. The market is changing so quickly. I think our biggest challenge is understanding what's going on with the market. We're watching it every single day. We're talking with our affiliate partners and even competitors to see kind of what they're seeing. So our challenge right now is, I think, was just share of wallet, right? Everybody right now, and we saw this in March, which was odd for us. We saw during spring break a decline in business just for that 2-week period. It's like, this has never happened. It's weird. Well, it's because everybody is going out on vacation. So I think for right now, our challenge is to overcome that, right? We've pivoted a lot internally. We've scaled up certain channels to capture incremental consumers that we weren't getting before. So we're definitely addressing it, but for this year, that's been the challenge, right? That's kind of the theme of the year, is like, how do you overcome a more competitive share of wallet environment than we've been in the past? And that will pass, right? Right now there's pent-up demand for travel and experiences and getting out, but at some point we're going to normalize, and we get back to kicking on the afterburners. So does that answer your question? Okay, thanks.
Do you sorry about that. How do you discover the right content that fits your personas or channels that you're interested in?
Still a work in progress for us, but it's all through test and learn. And we'll test content either in a single channel, or we'll try to isolate a geo or isolate a consumer, like a third-party list of a subset of consumers that we can target with that, and then measure against the control. So I mean, for us, it's all about the test group, the test message against what's currently running, to see if you're driving left. Right? So. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.